favorite part about his time as Redskins offensive coordinator from 2010 to 2013. Here's how he responded.
What was the best part about coaching in Washington?
Being able to work with my dad and be around some other good coaches.
What was the worst part?
Everything else. I liked a lot of the players. Some good people.
Well, there's that. Panthers tight end Greg Olsen still here with us. Good to have you. Max, what is Shanahan really saying about his former team here? Reading the tea leaves.
I mean, by the way, don't take my word for it about Dan Snyder being the worst owner in the NFL. Like, look, he said he liked the other coaches. He said he liked the players. The fans in Washington are obsessed. I was in D.C. for 15 months because I was the original host of Around the Horn. Are obsessed with that Washington franchise. So who's he talking about? It can only be two people. Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen. Who else could he be talking about? It is a dysfunctional culture, and a fish rots from the head down. And what we have here is a rotten fish head. Kyle Shanahan, by the way, it makes it look even worse because what happened to the Falcons when he left? What happened to their offense? Fell apart. What happened to the Niners when he shows up there? Are they the best team in football right now? And we're not even talking about their offense. So when it comes from the mouth of a guy who shows you success, like he's the variable you control for, take him away, franchise falls apart. Put him in another franchise, they get great. And he's saying, I like everything about that place, except the owner and the top executive, basically. Tells you everything you need to know about the culture.
Well, I disagree with you. And I'm not disagreeing with you about Daniel Snyder, but I'm disagreeing with you about your perspective as it pertains to what may have motivated Kyle Shanahan to say what he had to say. Jay Gruden obviously did not do a good job. You are what your record says you are, as Bill Parcells once said, and we all know that Jay Gruden had 6 years coaching in the National Football League. He made the playoffs 1 year, and one could easily argue that the only reason he had the head coaching job to begin with, certainly why he kept it so long, was because of his last name. Let's talk about facts here. Sean McVay coached under Jay Gruden while Jay Gruden was the head coach of the Redskins. Matt LaFleur, the coach of the Green Bay Packers, coached there. And obviously Shanahan. Listen, I'm just saying it sounds French. That's all I mean by that. I mean no disrespect towards Matt LaFleur. The point that I'm trying to make, Mr. Olsen, is this. You've been in the NFL as a player for several years, many years. You know what I'm about to say is absolutely true. Coaches speak up for coaches. You think that Kyle Shanahan likes the fact that Jay Gruden was fired? You think that Sean McVay, who reached out and spoke to Jay Gruden on the phone in the immediate aftermath of his removal, like the fact that Jay Gruden was fired? You think Matt LaFleur or anybody else likes the fact that a coach gets fired? It amazes me. And I'm not saying they're wrong to do so because, listen, if I saw something happen to one of my contemporaries in this business, I'd probably speak up for them as well because you don't want to see people losing their jobs and having their quality of life compromised in any way. You are sensitive to that. But these are the same people who make sensitive decisions about players every single day. Under the guise that, excuse me, you either have to win or we have to replace you with somebody who can help us achieve the bottom line of winning. But when it comes to themselves, they want us to heighten our level of sensitivity when it comes to their tenure, their job security, etc. I respect and appreciate where Kyle Shanahan is coming from, just like I appreciated where Sean McVay is coming from, no doubt others. But in the end, they still have jobs because they're winning. Ron Rivera still has a job in Carolina because, damn it, he's won more than he lost. Jay Gruden is out of a job because he lost more than he won. We can point the finger to Daniel Snyder all we want to, and you might be right in a lot of the things that you're saying, Max. But in the end, Jay Gruden didn't get the job done, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think he's dead on. I think obviously wins and losses in this league dictate how long you're going to be around. I mean, he mentioned their record. He mentioned guys like Rivera and them who can ride those waves and come out the other end. I think the part that we also have to understand is, yes, coaches do support other coaches. Coaches are incredibly loyal to guys they've worked with in the past. And I think all those guys he mentioned that kind of share that history of being there in Washington, I think the part that rallies them all to having each other's back is the notion that it just seems to the outsiders, and it seems from Shanahan's comments there, that they felt with all these great coaches, with all these great players and all that, there was something missing that we couldn't have prolonged success, right? And you can see no matter who they hire, no matter what changes are made, what free agents added, what coordinators changed, what head coaches changed, nothing changes. And I think they all, without coming out and saying it, can say to each other, hey, we all understand what we were up against in an organization like that.
Yeah,
you know,
Greg, that's a big thing for you to say because you're still an active player who, you know, that's a job. Like there are jobs available for guys at the end of their career in organizations. And that's a strong thing for you to say about an organization that could one day, who knows, be a potential employer for you.
Yeah, and again, it's not a knock. I've never played there. I've never spoken to a player there who has had bad things to say. I'm saying from the point of these coaches, the reason why they're all quick to support each other, why McVay reached out, why Shanahan feels, you know, Stephen A's point of Kyle Shanahan is reacting to the firing of Gruden. I think all those guys share the sense of what could have been if we had some more framework, if we had some more support within the organization with the players that we had talent-wise and the coaches that we had come through those doors, what could have been. That's what it seems to me reading all the writing on the wall.
And here's my point that I wanted to make to Max and you, Greg, as well. Here's the bottom line. All of those guys can say what they want. And I'm not saying they're wrong with what they're saying any more than I'm saying Max is wrong. I'm not saying that. But Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, before those head coaching jobs came their way in Green Bay, Los Angeles, San Francisco, respectively, that same owner that you're alluding to, Max, Daniel Snyder, if he had said Jay Gruden needs to go 3-4 years earlier, Sean McVay, you're going to be the new head coach. Sean McVay turning that job down? Hell no. Kyle Shanahan turning that job down? Hell no. Matt LaFleur turning that job down when you had the 27th ranked offense in Tennessee and you were the 10th choice, the 10th interview in Green Bay, but somehow after a 3-hour meeting, you get the head coaching job in Green Bay. Would you have taken the job in Washington?
That's a bigger indictment.
Damn right you would have.
Wait a minute. That's a bigger indictment of Washington because what you're saying is even though a head coaching position in the NFL is so sought after that even a dysfunctional franchise basically has their choice of the best young coordinators in the game, Washington still can't get it right.
Hold on, Max. That's absolutely true. And I understand that about Daniel Snyder. But what I'm saying is they're talking, and you talked about how Shanahan's argument was basically highlighting the deficiency of ownership in Daniel Snyder. And I'm saying, yeah, but they would have took the job. If they had gotten offered the head coaching job, that same owner that they're talking about, they would have worked for.
What's Washington's record this year? 1 win. Those coordinators are now head coaches. A combined record of 14-4, if my calculations are correct.
I want to get to a team who has 2 wins. So the Browns, 2-4 heading into the bye, but GM John Dorsey is still all in on Baker Mayfield, saying he's 100% behind his quarterback despite his early season struggles. Baker was taken by Cleveland #1 overall in the 2018 draft. The Jets selected Sam Darnold 2 picks later at number 3 after Saquon Barkley went 2nd overall to the New York Football Giants. Stephen A., do you think the Browns at this point, after all the hype we heard, should regret drafting Baker over Sam Darnold?
Yes, I do. It's too early to tell, and I do understand that. But I want Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens and John Dorsey, if they're watching, to understand I'm not denigrating Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield's got some promise, and I still believe in him. I'm just saying that because of what I've seen from Sam Darnold, what Bill Belichick and others have said about Sam Darnold. Clearly, you have an abundance of people out there who believe that Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield at this point. And if that's the case and you had the #1 overall pick, you got to remember what we're looking at when we look at the Browns. If indeed we decide that Baker Mayfield is not as good as Sam Darnold, you know what that means, guys? That the Browns lost out twofold. Because not only did you pick the wrong quarterback, but you also passed up on Saquon Barkley, who's widely considered to be the best running back in football. Even though you got Nick Chubb and you got Kareem Hunt coming, the bottom line is you will have passed up on Saquon Barkley and Sam Darnold, who's considered to be a better quarterback, in favor of Baker Mayfield. They can't admit that yet. The jury is still out. We all know that. But at this juncture, if you listen to people talk about the quarterbacks, They're saying Sam Darnold is better than Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, look.
That's a problem when you have Cleveland's history.
Sam Darnold's also younger than Baker Mayfield, playing better and younger. But I got to say this. It was a gut look. Sam Darnold was more the prototypical guy that goes number 1 overall. I was expecting him earlier in the process to go number 1. There was no knock against him. He was Baker Mayfield's a little short, and his personality wasn't one of a franchise quarterback in the modern NFL. Sam Darnold checked every box. There was really no boxes that he didn't check at a certain level. But Baker seemed to check certain boxes at a higher level, even if others were unchecked. That kind of guy is more of a risky pick and generally doesn't go number 1 overall. I thought it was gutsy of the Browns to take him. I thought it was correct at the time. I think it's still too early to make it to say one way or another how this is going to break. But the NFL is a risk-averse league. And, a coach goes for it on 4th down when he should instead of punting, and it comes back to burn him. And they remember that burn and sometimes don't go for it on 4th down in the future. My concern with all this, if Darnold does wind up to be the better quarterback, Greg, is the NFL goes back to kind of like a little more risk-averse. Remember, they took Baker Mayfield. That was a risky pick. Sam Darnold checks all the boxes, and it's a more interesting place, I think, when teams take risks like they did on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I think back to 2011 when the Panthers are on the clock with the number 1 pick and they take Cam Newton, right? 1 year of college football, it's his game going to transition. And the guys that Blaine Gabbert and Jake Locker, of course, we all know we made the correct decision. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't initially, that wasn't the consensus, right? And last year wasn't the consensus either. There's a lot of people in New York that before Saquon busted out, there were people in New York killing Gettleman for not taking a quarterback at number 2 and taking a running back in a league that was so, quote unquote,
How about when he took Daniel Jones?
Right. So I think early
idiots were criticizing him for
all
that.
These idiots
so I think we just have to be careful. I know a couple people up in Cleveland that have nothing but unbelievable things to say about Baker Mayfield. I think he comes across in a certain way to people who don't know him. I think he's a little brash. I think he's a little abrasive. I think that causes people to be extra critical of a young quarterback. Obviously the interceptions are not, but when you guys put those numbers up, the interceptions are a problem. And obviously that's a huge part of playing quarterback. Outside of that, higher completion percentage than Sam Darnold. Obviously, he's thrown for a lot more yards in 5 more games. So I think the jury,
in college, by the way.
Yeah, I think the jury is still out on Baker. I think he's got to get some structure up there. I think they got to find who they are. He's got a lot of new pieces, a lot of new personalities. He's trying to navigate, new young coach who's trying to figure out all that too. I think we got to give them a little chance. I think we got to let that play out. And I think we're going to be sitting here in a year or two from now with a lot more clarity on those two.
And let's be honest, we just saw Sam back.
True.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, we just saw Sam back, but the other thing that I would say to Greg is this. Composure does matter. Leadership capabilities does matter. I like Baker Mayfield a lot. We'll see. But Baker Mayfield does have Jarvis Landry. He does have Odell Beckham Jr. And even though we saw Robbie Anderson show up and show out against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday, the fact of the matter is it's been widely recognized that the Jets don't have a number 1 receiver per se. So it's about who you're working with as well that matters.
All right. You're a fantastic tight end. Really good at this TV thing.
Thanks so much, guys.
So let's make some picks.
Very much so.
KC at Denver. Who you got?
KC. I think their offense is going to be good enough. I think Max and I were talking during the break. Defensively, I think they got to tighten up a little bit. I know they got a lot of guys out. I think Kansas City's firepower. I think Mahomes will find his groove. Hard to bet against.
Field goal spread. I think they win, but I don't think they cover. I think that's a real tight game.
Stephen A., who are you rolling with?
KC, of course. I don't believe in Denver's offense.